My favorite part of being Orthodox is the Divine Liturgy. Yes, my name is Edward Hall. My main hobby in life is reading, actually. It's always been reading, except for when I was younger. Golf was a hobby. You know, I am not Greek, I'm not Russian, I'm a combination of a variety of things, but I'm really American. I grew up in the Protestant world. I accepted Jesus into my heart at 5 years old. My dad was a pastor. I grew up through basically going to different churches within that Protestant world until I was 66 years old. Then I found the Orthodox Church. My youngest son called me from Texas and said, "Hey, Dad, have you heard of the Orthodox Church?" Because he knew I was looking at the Catholic Church. I'd been through the RCIA. And I said, "Well, is it like the Catholic?" He said, "Well, you've got to listen to this link." And he sent me a link. And I listened to the introduction on Orthodoxy, and I was kind of hooked. I found Three Hierarchs Church online initially. I asked Google for the nearest Orthodox church, and this church came up, Three Hierarchs in Wenatchee. And I went and looked at it, and I thought, that's it. I'm going to go visit there. The minute I walked into the temple, I was hit with it. I was emotional. It was like realizing that I had actually found something I had been looking for all my life, thinking I'd found it many times in my life, and then all of a sudden, coming through the door from the narthex into the nave, I realized, wow, this is incredible. The biggest challenge in becoming Orthodox really was, at first it was sharing with my Protestant friends that I was becoming Orthodox, because whenever I mentioned it, I really needed to go into a complete explanation of the history of the church. But it's been very, good. Orthodoxy was different than what I had thought it might be, because I was correlating it to the Catholic Church in my mind, and I'd been to Mass. And it was different in that the Divine Liturgy was, first of all, we stand during the Divine Liturgy, and that was certainly different. The focus is on Jesus Christ and the worship. There's not focusing on anything else. Not focusing on others, not focusing on what my neighbor's doing, nothing like that. It was, you're so focused in worship that you do not take account of others. That was a real difference. I think one of the biggest misconceptions people have about Orthodoxy is that we have lots of rules you have to follow and all these things that must be done. In fact, as the ancient church practiced it, we have things that we do that my previous churches didn't do, like fasting on Wednesdays and Fridays. These are things, and when I first mentioned fasting to my wife, she said, "You're not going to eat?" I said, "Well, no, it's not exactly that." And so these are things that I discovered that have become actually quite enjoyable, and that I really had a misconception about the church and its fasts, and the church and the feast days. These things I had never been exposed to. When I first encountered Orthodoxy, and in conversations with my son in Texas, who, by the way, was baptized also, him and his wife and little children, 3 weeks after I was into the Orthodox Church down in Texas, when we were talking about this, we did talk about the fact that we're making a commitment to Jesus Christ and the life of Christ in our home and changing the way we live. We're not used to changing the way we live. And in fact, it gives us the means to have victory. I had things in my life as a Protestant believer, and I was pretty devout. I went to church always, and I had prayer meetings. I did everything, and I had things in my life that I could not get rid of. secret sins in my life. Couldn't get rid of them. When I came into Orthodoxy, all of a sudden I'm finding the tools in confession and the Eucharist and in daily prayer, in my morning and evening prayers, and I'm able now to live a life of victory in Christ that I never knew was possible. And finding the church Jesus built was such a big thing to me because I'd been going to a church that was less than 100 years old now. And now I'm going to a church that was where Peter was the first bishop of this church, of the Antiochian church. I said, I want to go to that church. That's when I found it online, and I was looking at the sign out front, and I thought, wow, I've got to check that out.